the session. Hi everyone. Today and tomorrow Salesforce development. Today Salesforce development day 26. Let's see what are we going to learn today. We'll quickly go through the previous session overview and we'll talk about the DML drawbacks, and then we will talk about the database class and what is the Database.Insert Method we will see, and how to insert the data, and what is the Database.SaveResult, what it contains. We will see that what is the Database.Error method and syntax for other methods. We will see what are the syntaxes for other methods, and also we'll take one of the use case for the Database.EmptyRecycleBin, and then we will talk about the synchronous operation and asynchronous operation. What is the differences between the synchronous and asynchronous? And then in the asynchronous, we will talk about the batch programming, batch apex, batch class, and then conclusion, interview questions. Quickly, so what did we learn so far in the last class? Yes.
We learned about merge and database query.
DML operation we have seen, database query. Yes. What else?
State. Insert, delete, undelete statements.
Right. So we have seen all the DML operations we have seen. Now let's take one of the use case. So let's say that write an Apex program to insert 50 hiring manager record inside the object. So basically I'm going to insert 50 records inside the hiring manager record. So let me create a program. So I'm creating the class here. Inside the class, I'll create a method, public static void. There is no return type. That's the reason I'm taking the static void. Let's say create bulk records. Now, here, sorry. So here we are going to insert 50 records. The object is hiring manager record. Let me take the API of the hiring manager. This is the API name. So let me insert. It has to be inside the for loop integer. Let's take a counter equal to 1 and counter less than or equal to 50. Let me take the 10 records and the counter plus plus. And what I'm doing, I'm inserting the hiring manager record. Now initializing, creating the object here, HR dot. So there are few mandatory information. So let me go to the hiring manager. So whenever we are creating the hiring manager from the Salesforce UI point of view, there are few fields which are mandatory. So let's go to the hiring manager here. And let me create a new record. Whenever I'm creating a new record, I can see that email address is mandatory, contact number is mandatory, hiring manager name is mandatory. These three informations are mandatory. Now let's go ahead and use this HR.name let's say sample HR, and I'll give the counter here so that every time whenever I'm creating a record, it will be created sample HR1, sample HR2, sample HR3. So like that it will be created. And HR dot, the contact number is mandatory. So I'll use the contact number. Let's say and HR dot, we have a location. So I'll give a location. Also, we have a email address designation. IT@gmail.com. So this is the email address. Also, if you wanted to take the designation, we can take the designation. So HR manager. Designation, HR manager. Now, everything I'll be adding into the list. List of hiring manager, HR list equal to new list of hiring manager. Everything I'll add into the list. Dot add HR. So each record I'm pushing into the list. Now finally, I'll cross verify is my list is having any data or not. If size is greater than 0, then we used to do the insert HR list. Now this is what we used to do so far. If I execute this, I can see the 10 records that gets inserted. Right? So this is what we know, everybody is aware of it. Now if I try to insert, then what will happen? It is going to insert the 10 records. So let me execute it. Create bulk record and click on execute. Total 17 records, it will be there in my hiring manager. Right, so total 17 records, it got created. Now this is as usual, we know that this is a normal process. Now let's suppose right now I'm inserting the 10 records. So what I'll do is out of 10 record, one of the record, I'll say that, so this is as per the real-time scenario. In the real time, what we will do is before creating a record or before assigning the value to any field, we will cross-verify certain conditions. We will cross-verify certain conditions. If that conditions does not match, then we will not place this value inside this field. Let's suppose right now, in order to create that kind of a scenario, what I am doing here is I'll say that if counter is not equal to 9, if counter is not equal to 9, then only insert this email address. Insert this email address. That means whenever it is inserting the data, we have total 10 records. So it will execute line by line synchronously. First, it will execute the first, second, and then fourth, third, fourth, fifth, and the sixth. When it reached to ninth record, it will not place this email address. Because I have given that place this email address for everybody except 9. Except 9, everybody, this value should be assigned to email address. But in our case, in our object, whenever we are creating the new object, the email address is mandatory. The email address is mandatory. Without the email address, it will not create it. But I have a scenario that I'm checking a condition for the counter 9, don't add the email address. So in this kind of a scenario, how can we handle the DML operation? Now what I need is, I need to execute everything. I need to execute everything. It should not throw me an error. Now if I try to execute this, now if I try to execute this scenario, it will throw an error saying that system DML exception, insert failed, first exception row 8. The required field is missing. The required field is email address. So what happened right now, because of this 9th record, none of the records are not inserted. If I go and refresh it, still I can see 17 records which are there in the hiring manager. But this is not going to work. So let's assume that I'm receiving the data from outside through the interface. From the different system, I'm receiving it. So whenever I'm receiving the data from different system, these conditions needs to be verified. If this condition is true, then only go ahead and set my value inside this field. No, in case if I do not have a value, or if I do not, this condition does not meet for one of the record. So assume that it met the record for this, but it did not meet the record for 4th one. And this is perfectly fine, this is perfectly fine, this is perfectly fine, this is fine. And for the 9th one also did not meet the requirement, and this is the fine. But whoever is looking fine, go ahead and insert. So these are fine, go ahead and insert. These are fine, go ahead and insert. This is fine, go ahead and insert. So in that case, what will happen is, whatever the errors are there, those excluded, but which are the errors are not there, go ahead and process that. We need this kind of a scenario. But right now, what is happening is, because of this one record, none of the records are not processed. Because of the one record, none of the records are not processed. Just hold on it. Okay, so none of the records did not process, right? So this scenario does not work. This scenario does not work. So because these kind of a scenarios are called as a atomic. It's a atomic. That means if one of the record is failed, then I'll not process anything. Everything it will roll back. Till this point, till 8th, everything is gone perfectly fine. 9th one has an issue. So what it did, everything has rolled back to the original. So none of them has inserted in the system. So, but this kind of a scenario we do not want in the real time. It should perform as it is. For that is one of the drawbacks. So it is purely atomic performance, and partial execution does not happen with the DML. Partial execution, that means execute the half of the record whichever you feel that is good, execute it. The partial execution is not there with the DML statement. And the second one, in case if there is any error, it will not give you the tracking mechanism. It will not give you the tracking mechanism, like which one is failed, which one is successful, and out of these records, which record. So right now, whenever I'm executing it, it says that required field is missing. But which record it is missing, it doesn't say. Which record the required field is missing, it does not give the information. So the tracking mechanism is not available with the insert, the DML operation. So the first one is the atomic, and the second one is partial execution is not available, and the tracking mechanism is not available. So those are the DML drawbacks. So DML drawbacks are, the first one is DML statements are purely atomic. That means whenever we are performing the DML operation on the collection of records, if any of the record fails, then it will roll back whole entire transaction. And this is right now we are doing it for the 10 records. Assume that in the real time we do 5,000 records or 10,000 records. During that time, if everything is processed fine, but at the 9,000 record level, there is some issue. So what will happen? Everything it will roll back. So that's the problem with the DML statement. So DML statements will not provide the partial processing mechanism. It does not give what is happening. Half of the thing can be processed or half of the thing can be pending, that cannot be processed. And the third one is DML statement will not provide any tracking mechanism to track each record operational result. Right? So it does not have a tracking mechanism. That's the reason Salesforce has come up with, to avoid these drawbacks, the Salesforce has come up with database class methods. Database class methods. In this database class methods, we have many things which are available. So database is basically a class. Here, database is a class. This is a class in Salesforce, which is hidden. This is a class in Salesforce, which is hidden. And this provides different methods. So what Salesforce done is, in this class, they have implemented a multiple method, like a method 1, method 2, right? So like that, the Salesforce has implemented multiple methods to perform a DML operation. So what are those methods? The first one is Database.Insert. This is for the inserting the record. Database.Update to update the record. Database.Delete to delete the record. Undelete method to undelete the record. Upset method to upset the method. Upset means update plus insert. And then we have a merge method to combine the data. And finally, we have a empty recycle bin. So Database.EmptyRecycleBin is basically how can you clear the data from recycle bin. So also which is called as a hard delete. So database class has provided these many methods, which is mostly used in the real time. So the maximum number of rows that can be inserted or updated or deleted in single synchronous Apex test execution, the limit is 4,45,000. So how many records, how many database, the methods which you can perform is, so that means 45 methods you can perform in 45 methods you can create in the Apex. So that 45 methods each method can insert at least 10,000 records. 10,000 records. That means total 4,50,000 records you can insert by using the database classes. So whatever we are doing so far, it's called as a synchronous process. That means in the insert, whatever is happening is right now, whenever we are doing the insert, the DML or a database, It is basically we are in the synchronous apex. That means one by one it gets executed. Out of
Swapna,
yeah.
Swapna. Hello.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Swapna, you said it is 4,50,000, right? What is it? Is it a limit you're saying? 4,50,000?
Yes, 4,50,000.
Yeah. So when we did DML insert, it was 50,000, right? We can execute 50,000.
4,50,000 records of the rows.
At a time, we can insert 4,50,000, you mean?
Right. That means if you are writing a multiple method in single transaction, for example, in single transaction, you are writing a 4 methods. So 4 methods are insert methods. So each method is doing the 20,000. 20,000 records it is inserting here. So 4 into 20,000, that means 80,000 records, but you have a limit of 4,50,000 rows, you can insert it.
Okay.
Ma'am, in the previous class, you told 150 DL statements.
DML statement, that is a DML statements.
Okay.
Right now we are discussing about the database class.
Yeah. Okay.
Any confusion, anybody?
In the previous example, in the DML drawbacks, you inserted 10 records, right? That you used list data type. If you don't use the list data type there, can we add that initially 8 records?
How can you add the 8 records if you do not put it into the list? So basically each one of them you have to insert.
Yeah.
So that is a long process.
Yes.
So which is not the right way, because every time your Apex is hitting the database, whenever you do the insert, going to the database, hitting there.
Yes.
So using the DML operation. So again here. So using the DML, the statements, that means how many the statements you can write it is 150. 150, you can write it in the single transaction. But how many records you can process it? Records you can process is 10,000 records you can process using the DML. This is DML, number of records. Now, when you are each time hitting the, now when you are writing the insert every time, so where you need to write a insert, you need to write inside the for loop. You need to write insert inside the for loop. If you are not placing into the collection.
Yes, we have to keep it inside the for loop.
For loop. For example, if you have a more records, like in a day from the integration side, from the third party side, every day you might be receiving so many records. So there are multiple customers at a time, they are creating the records at the end user. So that time, as soon as it see that it is hitting the limit, first of all, the best practice is we should not write the insert DML statement inside the for loop.
Okay, yeah.
Right, so database class is 45 methods that will, in case if you have the total limit of the records, you can, the rows that you can insert is, or insert, or update, delete, upsert, merge, whatever you are doing it. So those all are total, everything will be counted as a 4,50,000. Now, let's see the insert method. So the insert method is, we know that insert is term, we know it's a creating the record, inserting the record in the system. We know that. So, but using the database.insert, how can we do that? So by using this method, we can insert a collection of records into the Salesforce object at a time. Now, if you have a more than one record and you wanted to perform a insert record, if you have a single record also, you can use the database.insert, that's not an issue. So by using the Database.insert, either you can insert a single record or a collection of a record. That should be all good inside the Salesforce object. So the syntax for this is database.insert, then you have a collection of object. So in our case, whatever the class that we have written here, the collection is HR list. So the collection of name here, it is HR list. So you need to pass the collection of object name here. And then there is a Boolean value. There is a Boolean value, all or nothing. Now this Boolean value has a true and false. This Boolean value has true and false. True is nothing but it will maintain the transaction. That means whatever used to happen with the insert, like a normal insert, whenever you are doing the insert HR list, insert HR list, what used to happen? Whatever the records are good, it will try to, out of the 10 records, if everything is perfectly fine, it will process. If any of them are having an issue, then what it will do, it will roll back. Similarly, if you type a true here, it will maintain the transaction, whatever the insert statement is doing, same as it is, it will work. But if you say false, if you mention here false, what will happen? The partial processing gets executed. That means out of 10 records, if any of the record is not good, it will skip that record and rest of the records it will process. Like as I have mentioned, 1 to 10 I have a records, right? So 9th one is having problem. So what will do it if I specify false here? If I specify false here, what it will do? It will execute 1 to 8. The 9th one is a problem, then 10th one gets executed. The partial execution going to be happen. So in case if you do not specify, we'll see that with the practical. Now, before going to the practical, now whenever we are doing the database.insert, whenever we are doing the database.insert, the database.insert output, what is the outcome of this? Once it is executed, the database.insert, what should be the output? So output will be either success or either it will be error. The output will be either success or error. If you have a success, that means it's everything processed perfectly. In case if there is an error, it will store it into the error. Now, in order to, whenever we get a save, whenever everything is processed, if you want to save the record, so we have another method in order to save the record, so which is called as a Database.SaveResult. Database.SaveResult. And if there is any error, you can store it into the Database.Error method. Saving the record, the outcome of the save record, you can store it into the save result method. The outcome of the error, you can store it into the error. You can store it into the error method. So we'll see that how we are going to see how we are going to do that. So first, let's see the save result method. What it does is it will store the result of the record which are inserted into the object. Right, so each database.SaveResult method can store only one record result because this is only one record. This is only one record. If you want to store the multiple records, then you need to build this database.SaveResult as an array or a list of collection. Now, how can you build it like this? Database.SaveResult, add this, which is nothing but a list. Or you can add a list of a database.SaveResult and then give a name of it here, the object name, database.insert, pass your collection object name and the Boolean, true or false. Now, save result there are different methods are available in the save result. So success is nothing but in case if everything goes fine, that means it will return true. Now in get ID, in case if you wanted to know what are the success results are there, like you are processing 10 records, out of 10 records, I wanted to know the ID, which ID is actually processed. So you can get the information from the get ID. Similarly, get errors. So during the save, there are one record which is having an error. So that you can store it into the get error. So how can you store the get error details? So basically you need to use the Database.Error method there. So by using this class, we can track all the error information which has been raised by the Salesforce when the record gets failed to process. Now here also we have a method, like whenever it is error out, we wanted to know what is the exactly message. So you can use the get message that will return the error message. And also we have a status code, like there are different status codes out there. Like whatever we have seen, required field is missing, that is a status code. Similarly, we can see that mixed DML operation or a required field is missing. So these kind of errors will be stored into the get status code. And in case if you wanted to know which field is actually the required field is missing, then you have to use the get fields. You have to use the get fields. So get fields is whatever the affected fields are there because of this operation, that field details it will give you. That field details it will give you. Now let's go ahead and see that. Now, this is what we have done. Now what I'll do is I'll comment out this. I'll comment out the DML operation. What I'll do is if I have a records, that means this is my list of records. This is my list of records. If there is a list of records here, right? So if there is a list of records, what I'll do is I'll process into the database class. So what in the database, we have a method called insert. So I'll take a database.insert and I'll save that into the database.SaveResult. Dot size greater than 0. Now here. Now first I need to get the database.insert. So first what I'll do is database.insert. So database.insert, then we are going to take a list of object Boolean value. So here the list of object is HR list, and I'll not give this. I'll not give this. So what will happen? Let's see. Now this everything I'll store it into the database. Let me execute this. Let me store database dot save result. I'm storing into the database.SaveResult. Database.SaveResult. I'm storing this information. I use the class database and then method is called insert. Method is called insert. So this method, whatever is there, it is going to insert it. And whichever the one is having an error, here I have an error. So what it does is everything it is going to store it into the save result. So whether it is successful, all the information will be there in the successful information. What is the problem here? Database.SaveResult.
Object name, ma'am?
Yeah, object name I have to give. So let's say result. Perfect. Any questions so far? Anybody has any question till now?
Ma'am, can you please once again repeat that? Like what exactly that save result will do?
Okay. So save result is, now I'm doing here database.insert. Okay, so what it does, database.insert. What it will do, database.insert. Yes.
It said the record or overcome from partial.
It is basically insert the record inside the Salesforce object. Right? It will insert into the Salesforce object. Now, whatever it is inserting into the Salesforce object, okay, I wanted to store programmatically, I wanted to store that everything into one method or one list. I wanted to store all the records into a list. If you wanted to store all the information into the one record or one collection or one method, then what we are going to use is, we are going to use database.SaveResult. I'm going to use database.SaveResult. That means whatever the output of this is there, everything gets stored into the save result. Everything stored into the save result. Now, by using this save result, what I can do is I can print all the IDs. I can print all the IDs. So database.SaveResult, this is a list of it, and I'm giving an object name, and I'm using a database.insert. Here I'm passing the HR list. HR list, I'm passing it. Right? So it is going to store the information there. Is that clear? Is that clear?
Okay.
Okay, so whatever the data is saved, whatever the records are saved into the Salesforce, I wanted to get those information into this method so that in further going in the code, I can use this result, and I can, by using this result, I can loop through this result and I can get the each ID. I can get the each ID. So let's say that right now, let's assume that I'm inserting the record. I don't know what are the records that gets inserted. Now in future, I wanted to track that information. How can I track it? In case if I wanted to track it, what I'll do is I'll use this object, because all my saved records are stored into this method. All my saved records are stored into this. Now what I'll do is, okay, this is a list of it, right? So list I'm writing here. So what I can do is I can use this for loop, and I'll take this single record, database.SaveResult, let's say result colon, then I'm going to use the save result. I'm going to use save result. Now I'm looping through the save result here. Why I'm looping? Because I wanted to know the IDs. What are the records that are inserted in the system? I wanted to know the details. So what I can do is system.debug. I'll say that successfully inserted records. Plus, I'll use this result. In the result, I have it. In the save result, I have a 3 methods. In the save result, I have a 3 methods. The first one is a eSuccess, and then get ID, and then get errors. So I'll get here whatever the IDs are that are stored. So I'll get the IDs here. So that programmatically, I know that these records are inserted. If somebody asked that I wanted to know the IDs that are inserted in the system, somebody asked in the client side. So in that case, what we will do is, okay, if they are asking the IDs or the records that they wanted to check, then what we can do is we can print those records and we can give it to the client or a users or a third-party system. If I am sending the records to third-party system, or if we are receiving the data from third-party system, in that case, what we can do is we can give these many IDs that got inserted inside the Salesforce. In case if there is any error, let's assume that inside this, I'm going to check if the result dot is success. If the result dot is success, then give me all the success record IDs. Give me all the success record IDs in case if there is any error. In case if there is any error during this process. That means I have a error details here. I have a error details. So the error details will be stored into the Database.Error. The error details will be stored into the Database.Error. So what I'll do is I'll loop through the Database.Error, error colon, and where can I get the error details? From the save result itself, I have a get error method. Get errors. Get error. So whenever there is an error, so what I'll do is I'll get the information here. Let's say error status. And I wanted to know the error dot, whatever the status code is there. So I'll get the status code. In case if you wanted to know the field also, which field it is having the problem, then you can get it error dot get fields. Error field. Here. Now, I'm performing here Database.Insert. I'm performing here Database.Insert. Whenever I perform Database.Insert, there is an output to it. Whether it is an error or successful, some output will have. That output I'm storing into the one collection or a one record or one method. Assume that container. I'm storing that output into the another container. That container is Database.SaveResult. Database.SaveResult. I'm storing the output of this into a container. The container is Database.SaveResult. The container is Database.SaveResult. Now, Database.SaveResult has two things. Database.SaveResult has two things. One is if it is a successful, if the result of the save result is successful, then you can get all the information about the record ID here. You can get all the record ID from there. So if it is a successful, that means this is success. If it is success, get all the record IDs. Now let's assume that there is an error. There is an error. So this is success. So this is is success. Now, in case if there is any error, those errors will be stored into the get error. Those errors will be stored into the get error. Now this get error, again, I have to loop through it. What are the get error is there? Again, I have to loop through it. How can I loop through it? Basically, this get error will ultimately store it into the another container. This has another container. What are the get errors are there? These get errors are stored in another container, which is called Database.Error. Database.Error. Now, this Database.Error gets the input from here. It gets the input from here. So I have to loop through this. And whenever I'm looping through this, again, I need to get the exact status code. What is the error message? Exact status code of what is the error message. I can get error message and which field, everything I can get the details. Now this, I will get it here. Here, so database.insert, that means database.insert has a tracking mechanism, which was missing in the normal DML. This has a tracking mechanism, so which is missing in normal DML operation. How can I track it? What are the records are inserted? What are the records are error? So by using this, I can track it. Now, let's go ahead and execute it. Now let's execute this. What is happening here? Required field is missing. Why it is required field is missing? Because I have not mentioned the false. Because I have not mentioned the false. By default, it will take the true. By default, it will take the true. I have mentioned the false. Now, if I go to the object and if I refresh the hiring manager, still I can see 17 records. Still I can see 17 records. Now I have mentioned here false, debug, open, execute. Now it got executed. Now do you see here all the records are inserted? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Ninth record is having the error. From where I'm getting the ninth record error message, I'm getting it from this line. I'm getting it from this line. So till here, it is looping through the save result. First record is successful. Okay, so here everything is inserted and it's stored into the save result. Now I'm looping through the save result here. Save result has a list of records. Save result has list of records. So this list of records, I'm looping through it. When I loop through it, the first record, what about the first record? Is it successful? Then print this. Then go to the next record. Is it successful? Second record, go to this. Now, third record, is it successful? Yes, go to this record. Fourth record, yes, it is successful. Fifth record, yes, it is successful. Sixth, yes. Seventh record, yes, it is successful. Eighth record, yes, it is successful. Ninth record, no, this is not qualifying it. Then it will go to the else condition. When it goes to the else condition, now what I'm doing here, I'm looping through the errors. What are the errors I have? I'm looping through the errors. I'm looping through the errors. Now that errors. Now looping through the errors. So first it will execute all the success records. First it will execute all the success record. 10th one also it will execute. Now finally it will come to the else condition and it will check result.errors. Yes, there are some records into the error. Now which record is the error? So it seems like this is the record that is the error. So go ahead and print those records here. Now that's how I'm getting the ninth record is error. Now 17 plus, if 10 records would have been inserted, 10 records it would have been inserted, then I would have get the 27 records. But right now I'll see only the 26 records because one record is failed. Because one record is failed. So I'll see 26 records are created. Clear about the database.insert and how to store the record into the save and how to get the errors. Any questions on this?
Swapna?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so I assume we use database class mostly during integration, right? When we fetch records from the external system.
Integration as well as the lightning, LWC, in case LWC lightning is calling the Apex, we use this.
Okay, and now suppose, we are fetching the records, and suppose out of 10,000 records, 5,000 records have some errors, so
Mhm.
they did not go through.
Mhm.
Okay, and I have added system.debug in my program.
Mhm.
Okay, so when I'm executing it from the developer console, I can see the logs here, right? I can directly go in the log execution anonymous window and I can see the log. But otherwise, how do I see the logs? Do I have to set the trace this one,
So
debug
there
trace?
are multiple ways which you can do that. So as you said that the data is coming from third party.
Yeah.
Whenever the data is coming from third party, whether it is successful or not successful, we have to send the response back to the third party. If you are sending the response back to the third party, instead of printing here system.debug, what you have to do is you have to build a JSON here. So you need to build a JSON here and build the payload, the response which you are sending it. So in that response, you can pass these are the records are filled. That is one scenario. Second scenario is you can create a one object called tracking error object. Tracking object. So what you can do is whenever there is an error in this tracking object, create a few fields like error ID or error details.
So this is a custom object, you mean? Custom
Yes.
object.
Yes, custom object.
Okay,
Error
okay,
message, and then you can place what are the fields you want, complete data you want. So everything you can place it into this custom object so that inside the admin also can know that what are the records that can be failed.
Okay, okay.
Now, any other questions? Anybody who has not got the clarity here? So simple steps, database.insert, storing into the save result. If it is successful, then I'm printing the record ID. If there are error, I'm looping through the database.error and I'm printing the error message as well as a field. Okay. Now,
And Swapna, one more thing. So these errors, are they only tracking the DML errors, or suppose if I have duplicate rule setup or a unique field and I'm trying to add another email with the same, even if it is unique, even those type of error it tracks.
so basically whenever you are creating a record in Salesforce, whenever you are creating a Salesforce here, whatever it says that could not able to create a record here. When you click on a save, could not able to create a record. All those will be tracked.
Okay, okay.
Now, just for more clarity, DML statements and database methods. Now we have two things, DML statement and database methods. In the DML statement, I'm using the insert a single record, insert account, or could be possible that insert ACC list, either this collection or a single record. Now here, database method, what I'm doing is database.insert, and I'm passing that ACC list, or you can pass account also. ACC list, comma, I'm mentioning here false. Where the false is indicating the partial updates or creation in Salesforce. So you can partially update the data. Now, that is the first point. This is the first point. Now, the second point is partial updates are not allowed in the DML. Partial update is not allowed here in the DML statement. Now, whereas in database method, the partial updates are allowed. This is allowed. You can do that, partial updates. Now, the third point is, in case if there is any record is failed, you cannot get the list of how many records are successful, how many records are failure. So list of success records and list of failed records. You cannot get it. You cannot get it using the DML. Whereas in the database method, you can. So you can get the list of how many records are successful and how many records are failed. We can get this. Right? So these are the main differences between the DML and database method. Any questions before I move on? No, let's move on. Homework. Write an Apex program to insert 50 candidate record inside the object by using the database class method and allow the partial processing mechanism. In case if you wanted to allow the partial processing mechanism, what should we need to do? What is the keyword that we have to use? Sorry?
Database.insert, then account, comma false.
So in case if you wanted to pass the allow partial mechanism in the database class, we have to use the false keyword in the second parameter. We have to use the false keyword in the second parameter and track the each record. So tracking, how you will do it, tracking the record, you need to store it into the Database.SaveResult. Store it into the list of the Database.SaveResult. Now, similarly, syntax for other methods, database.update is the same. Whatever the syntax is there for the database.insert, same for the database.update also. So database.SaveResult, object name, database.update. Instead of insert, you need to use the update. And the two parameters, collection of object, Boolean. Similarly, for the delete also, you can store it into the delete result. For the insert update, it is a save result, and the delete, it has a delete result. You can store it into the delete result, and this side database.delete method. And here we are passing the two parameters. Undelete, it has to store it into the undelete result, and database.undelete method, and we have to pass the two parameters. Database.upsert, you have to use the database.upsert result. So object name and use the database.upsert. And then error, pass the details of two parameters you have to pass. Then next one is a database.merge. So for the merge, database.merge result, you have to store the data into the merge result and then database.merge. Everything is same, the logic, everything is same. Only the thing is the keywords are different. Keywords are different, that's it. So if you are performing the database.merge, store it into the merge result. If you are performing the database.upsert, store it into the upsert result. If you are performing the database.undelete, store it into the undelete result. If you are performing the database.delete, store it into the delete result. Store it into the delete result. Now, next one is a database.EmptyRecycleBin. Database.EmptyRecycleBin. So write a Apex program, write a program to delete permanently one record from the account object. So let's go to the account object. Let me take any record. I'm taking a account record, which is called as a Hyderabad. I'm taking the Hyderabad record. So usually what will happen is whenever I delete any record, it usually sits into the recycle bin. It usually sits into the recycle bin. It usually sits into the recycle bin. Now, there might be a question that might come up in the interview saying that differences between the soft delete and hard delete. Soft delete and hard delete. Soft delete is nothing but after deleting the record. Like for example, I'm deleting this record. Whether you delete this record from here through the Apex or through the Lightning, whatever the record you are deleting it. And if you see that record in the recycle bin, that means it is a soft delete. That means it is soft delete. That means you have deleted it, but it's still there in the system. Still, it is there in the system database level, which is called as a soft delete. Hard delete is nothing but whenever you are deleting any record here, whenever you are deleting any record, it should not exist in the recycle bin. Whenever you are doing the delete, hard delete, should remove it from the object level, should remove it from the recycle bin. That is called as a hard delete. That means once we do the hard delete, we cannot see anything inside the recycle bin of that particular record. So hard delete, you can use the Apex in order to do that. In configuration side, it is not possible. Now let's go ahead and see. One way of the hard delete is using the empty recycle bin. So during the delete operation, you can use this, and what you can do is you can perform empty recycle bin, so that what will happen, the data will be deleted from the recycle bin also. Right now I'm taking this record, Apex record 11. Now I cannot see that Apex record 11 here in the recycle bin. What I'll do is, and the total records in the recycle bin which I have is 19 records. Now let me go to the developer console, go to the open. Now I'm going to query that particular record, account ACC equal to select ID from account where ID equal to, I'm passing that ID, right? I'm just querying the one record here, querying the one record. Then after that, what I'm doing it, I'm deleting the record. If I perform this, what will happen? It go and sit into the recycle bin. If I perform this operation, if I execute this operation, the record will sit into the recycle bin. But I do not want this record to be there in the recycle bin also. I do not want this record. If I'm deleting the record, it should not be available in the recycle bin. That means it should be deleted from the recycle bin also. In that case, what you can do is Database.EmptyRecycleBin. Empty recycle bin. So here you can pass whatever the object is there or a list of IDs. List of IDs or a object, list of object, you can pass it. Now what will happen? This will delete the record and then the same record gets deleted from the empty recycle bin. From the recycle bin also it will be deleted. So I'm executing it. Click on it, execute. Now it is deleted the record. Now if I go and see, refresh this Apex record 11, it says that the record is not available. Looks like there is a problem. Now in the my recycle bin, right now I have 19 records. I'm refreshing it. Still I can see 19 records. This is a hard delete. Do not do the hard delete in the production environment. Hard delete is basically you cannot even see from the recycle bin. Any questions on the empty recycle bin?
Swapna,
Yeah.
suppose, okay, I want IDs of all the records in the recycle bin. Okay, I want all the records. I want to delete all the records which are already deleted some time back. Okay, but without going into the recycle.
I cannot hear you.
Yeah, hello, you can hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Suppose I want to delete all the records from the recycle bin. Okay, for the accounts object, suppose. Okay, so how would I select all the objects which are only there in the recycle bin?
Right. Yeah, go ahead. Somebody is saying.
Yeah. In SQL query, we have to return is deleted equals to true.
Is deleted. Okay.
All row and all rows.
All rows. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, okay. Yes.
Perfect. So let's move on. And before going to the questions, let me give the assignment. So assignment is create Apex programming to update a record inside the account object. Let's assume that you are updating the phone number or industry. Phone number, industry, rating. And then also create a record, create a new record. Create a new record in account object. And then perform above two operations. Two operations using the database class. And do the partial execution. In case if there are any error, do the partial execution and then track all the IDs. Track all the IDs. So how you will be doing this? Which method you will use it in the database class?
Upset.
Upsert, yes. So by using the upsert method, update it as well as the create it, and then database.upsert pass the list, and then here in the boolean give the false. That's it. Now questions. What is the difference? What are the different database class methods?
Insert, update, delete, and delete.
Database.insert, database.delete, database.undelete, database.upset, database.merge.
Database.SaveResult, Database.Error.
Right. Database.EmptyRecycleBin. Now, where can we see save the output of the database methods?
Database.SaveResult.
That is for
Insert and update.
that is for insert and update. What
Update.
about for the upsert?
Database dot
Database
save upsert.
upsert result.
Okay.
How about for the merge? How about for the merge? Where it will save the record? For the database.merge, where it will save the record? Merge result. How about undelete, database.undelete, where it will save? For undelete, where it will save?
Delete result.
Delete result.
Undelete result. For delete?
Delete result.
Delete
Delete result.
result.
See, the result will be same here. So based on your method, this will be changed. Upsert, merge, delete, undelete, right? So the pre-word, whatever you see here, prefix, that will be changed based on the method. If there are any errors, where can we store the error details of the database method?
Database.Error.
Database.Error. If there are, okay, what is the difference between the database.insert collection object comma true and database.insert collection object comma false?
It will, if it is true, it will not allow the partial.
Partial success.
If it is false, it allows the partial.
Right. Now, next topic is asynchronous operation. Next topic is asynchronous operation. So,
Swapna, I had one doubt for database.merge. Okay, I think we can merge only 3 records at a time, right? Because I tried yesterday. It allows me to merge only 3 records.
that is
Is it
from
true?
Salesforce side. Salesforce.
That's what. No, you are even from the program. It allows only 3 records, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So next topic is asynchronous operation. Before understanding the asynchronous, let's understand the synchronous operation. So far, whatever we have executed the program, whatever we have done, everything is a synchronous. That means first it is processing the first record. Once it is either error or successful, then it is going to the second record. Then it is going to the third record. Then it is going to the fourth record. What is happening here? Sequentially, it is executing the one by one. If fourth record is taking a time, fifth record will wait till the fourth record is completed. till the fourth record is completed. Whatever the next records are there, everything will be waited. Right, so it will wait. So once this fourth record is executed, then only the fifth record it will come and it will pick up and then it will execute it. So that means it's not even checking the what is the next record. It is not even checking the what is the next record. It is in the synchronous, it is busy in processing the current record. It is busy in processing the current record. What is the next record, whether there is a record or not, it will not worry about it. It will not care about the next record. What is the next record? So synchronous is basically, assume that I have a client system and I have a server system. I have a client system, I have a server system. So client system is nothing but a consumer. Client system is nothing but a consumer and server system is nothing but a provider. Consumer is nothing but a customer. Assume that customer. So I have a consumer system, I have a provider system, right? Now in the client side, client is the customers are creating the record. Whenever they create a record, the request goes to the server system. The request goes to the server system. And in the server system, it will take the request and it will try to execute the logic. What are the business logic is there that gets executed. Once the business logic is executed, then it will process the response back to the client system. Then client system can see the output in the customer can see the output in the UI. Similarly, one more customer came and another request sent. Right, so this request sent it, and it is also the server side system has taken the request to, and it is performing some business logic here, and assume that it has taken some time and sent the request to response back to the client system. So this time it has taken the 2 minutes. 1 minute and 2 minutes is okay. The client can wait it. The client can wait it. Let's suppose that there is some batch load is happening. The data loader is happening from the client side. There is an admin team who is doing the data loading part of it. So whenever they do the data load, definitely there has to be inserted the record inside the server system. So which is a request 3. They have sent the request 3 to the server side system, which is taking a long time, almost 2 hours it is taking a time. Almost it is taking a 2 hours time. Now, whenever it is taking a time, what the client system should do, if they are trying to send it, this will not listen to the next one. Because right now, the server system is very busy in processing the request 3. It is very busy in processing the request 3. It is not even listen the request. Whatever the next request is there, it will not try to listen that, because server system says that I am busy right now processing the synchronously one by one. Processing the synchronously one by one. Just an example of the real time. So let's suppose there is a function, marriage function is there, right? So let's suppose you have 10 friends you wanted to invite. Now what you will do, it's a marriage, so at least we have to call them. If we are not going to their place, at least we need to call them. So that means you will call the first person. You will call the first person and you will talk to this person. Now there are till 9 members who are waiting in the queue. Now you are very busy with talking to this person, because you do not want to upset whatever the other person is talking. So you will talk it. So once you end the call, then only you can dial the next person. Whoever the second person is there, that person you can dial it. So once you dial it, you will be talking to the person and you don't care about the rest of the members. You will think that, okay, I'll call later. So you are talking in the phone with the second person almost for 2 hours. Because you are discussing something very important thing, and you will end the call after 2 hours. Then after 2 hours, you will go back to the third person and you will call. So that means each person you are taking some time. Now, sometime you are taking it and you are calling the person and you are talking to the person. Because you are busy in talking the person, you cannot either lift other person call or you cannot return the message or whatever. Basically, you will not pick up the any phone calls that are coming up because you are busy in this. You will not worry about what are the phone calls that are coming during that time. So same way, the synchronous operation is also what are the requests you have sent. It will just try to process that. Whatever the time it is taking, it doesn't care. So first it will process that request and send the response back. If it is taking a longer time, let it take a longer time. It will say that, okay, I'm busy in this processing the request. Now you have to wait it. So once this is done, it will send the response back to the client system. Then only the next request, whatever the request is there, it will try to listen to that request. This is the synchronous operation. That means it's processed in the line by line. So first come first, then second, then the next one, whatever the time, it doesn't care and it will process. This is how the synchronous operation. So far, whatever the logic that we have written is a synchronous operation. Synchronous operation. So first it executed the first record, then it executed the second record, then executed the third record, right? So like this, it is trying to process the record. Now, whereas asynchronous, now there is a problems with the synchronous operation because client cannot sit idle here because the 2 hours of time the server side system is taking there. Now we cannot tell the client side system you have to wait it for some time. And we don't know how much time server system is going to take it. Now we do not want to keep the client to be waited there. Whatever their actions are there, they should perform it. That means they should send the request. Let them send the request. Whatever the server side is performing, let them perform at the backend, but do not stop them to send the request. But using the synchronous, we are stopping them to send the request. We are stopping them to send the request. So that's the reason there is another functionality is called as asynchronous operation. Another one which is called as asynchronous operation. Now in asynchronous operation, same, I have a client system and I have a server system. Client system is basically consumer, server side system is a provider. Now same, so the request one is reached to the server system. So it will take some time and it will process the response, which is taking the 1 minute of time. And again, the consumer or the client side system has processed the request two, and this request two is taking a longer time. This request two is taking a longer time in the server side system. But the server side system still listen to the third person. Server side system still listen to the request 3. But when it listen to the request 3, but backend process is still in the process. Somebody is still working on this, right? So they are in the resource is already working at the backend. Server side system, the resource is already working on some operation. But we are still allowing the client side to send the request. But where do I store the request here? I can store the request in the another container called Apex queue. There is another container which is called as a Apex queue. Now, what server system will do that as a resource is busy with the 2 hours of time here while performing the request to, if I get any request here. Now, right now I have received another request while there is in the process of the request to. Now, what I'll do is the server system take that request 3 and it will place it into the request, the Apex queue. It will place it into the Apex queue. So server system says that, okay, you sit here in the request 3. That means that's fine. We can place it in the queue, but we are not stopping the client. We are not stopping the client to perform anything. Now again, client has performed the request 4. Fine, I'll place it into the queue. Again, they have performed the request 5. Fine, I'll place it into the request 5. Like this, I'll keep on place them into the queue. I'll place them into the container called as the Apex queue. Now, once the 2 hours, the resource is done performing the request to, they will send a response back to the client system. And now the resource is available. So what the resource will do is, resource will go to the Apex queue. The resource will go to the Apex queue. Whoever is the first one is there, it will pick up that and it will pass the server system. So it will try to process the request 3 and then it sends the response back to the request 3. Again, the request 3 is completed. Now the next, again, the resource will go to the Apex queue and it will check what is the next one which is available. So first one, it is going to check. So next one, I have a R4, request 4. So it will process the request 4. And in the meantime, if I receive any request here, while this resource is performing the request 4, during that time, if I receive any other request here, that means the request 6 is sent to the server system. So what it will do, it will add it into the request 6. That means whatever this resource is performing it, we are not disturbing the resource here. Whatever you are sending the request, simply I am putting into the Apex queue. Now, whenever this resource is available, it will go to the Apex queue and it will check what is my next process that I need to perform. Okay, next one is a request 3. So it is already processed. So that means it is deleted from the request Apex queue. Next one is a request 4. Now it will try to perform the request 4 and it will send the request 4. And similarly, request 5, it will send. Right? So we are storing, that means we are not stopping the client to perform anything. We are storing them into a container called as a Apex queue. In this container, I'm storing all the records, all the requests here. And whenever I see that my resource is available, at the backend, I'll tell my resource, okay, if you are done with the current process, go ahead and pick up the next one. From the Apex queue. So this resource will go and pick up from here. Now this resource is not a human being. This resource is a machine. Not a human being. So that it is going to pick up from the Apex queue and get the response, get that request to the here, and what are the business logic needs to be done. It will do the business logic and then it will send the response back to the client system. Is that clear? Asynchronous operation or asynchronous process. Any questions on asynchronous process? Okay. Now let's move on. So as part of the asynchronous operation or asynchronous process, Salesforce has provided the 5 features to implement the asynchronous operation or asynchronous program. In order to implement the asynchronous program, we have 5 different features. The first one is a batch programming, batch Apex. Second one is a schedule programming or a schedule Apex. The third one is a flex queues. And the fourth one is a future method. And the fifth one, queuable Apex. These are the 5 different asynchronous programs. So interview question, what are the different ways that I can process the logic asynchronously? There are 5 different ways we can process the logic asynchronously. Batch Apex, schedule Apex, flex queue, future method, queuable Apex. These are the 5 different ways which we can perform the asynchronous program. Now, let's see the questions. What is the difference between the synchronous and asynchronous? whatever you have understood. Yes.
Synchronous will be go by line. The request will be accepted after the response. In asynchronous, the request will be stored in the queue. So
Yes.
there is no waiting time in the asynchronous.
Right. And how about others? What you guys understood? What you guys understood? Madhu Mohan?
It makes the server side to wait for asynchronous, and asynchronous, like it will continue the process, and it will be having a queuable apex. All the requests that are being getting in that, it will be stored in the queuable apex.
Right. So synchronous, in simple way to remember, is synchronous is processing the line by line. Asynchronous is processing parallelly. Asynchronous is processing parallelly by storing the data into the queue. Okay, so let's move on. What are the different features to implement asynchronous operation?
Batch apex,
Batch apex,
schedule
schedule
apex,
Batch
queuable
apex,
apex,
scheduled
flex
apex,
queues,
flex queues,
future
future methods, and queuable apex or queuable interface.
Yes. Now the next one which we will see is batch apex, batch programming. So in simple term, if I have to say batch programming, okay. Now let me go back to the. Now let's assume that I'm taking a general scenario. I'm taking a general scenario. So assume that there is a family. So we have a family here. In this family, there are 4 members. In this family, there are 4 members are there. Father, mother, daughter, and son. So assume that there are 4 members are there. Now, in this family, okay, if they have to prepare a food, they have to prepare a food. Assume that the mother has to prepare a food. The mother has to prepare a food. Now, if they have to prepare a food, will they prepare a food separately for each person, or will they prepare the food all together? For everybody
All together.
or different?
All together.
All together. Everybody will have a same container. In that container, whatever we need to prepare, we will prepare it. Okay. So the food will be prepared for everybody in the same container. Now here the food is prepared for everybody same. Now during the lunchtime, these people are sitting here. Okay, assume that it's a time for lunch. When it is a lunch time, do they eat in the same container or do they eat in separate plate?
Separate plates.
Separate plate. So that means they have a separate plate. They will not eat it into the container. Whatever the container is there, they will not eat. So everybody has their own plate. Everybody has their own plate. So this person is having the same plate. Now everybody has their own plate. Now. So now what they will do is, from this big container, they will take whatever they wanted to eat, they will take the food here and they will start eating the food. They will take it from the spoon and they will put it into the plate and they will eat bite by bite. right? With the small pieces, they will eat it. With the small pieces, they will eat. Now, assume here, whatever the family that I'm saying here, this family is nothing but a organization. This family is nothing but a organization, the Salesforce organization. Salesforce organization. The family is nothing but organization. Now, the big container which I'm talking about is, this is about object. This is object. Now, whatever the food is available here, whatever the food is available, that is called a records. Inside the object, I have a multiple records. I have a multiple records. Now, whatever this person is eating here in this plate, they are taking from the big container and they are putting into the small container and they are eating the food. Now, when they say putting into the small container is nothing but placing into the temporary memory. Okay, assume that this is a temporary memory. Temporary memory. Now, whatever this temporary memory is there, so what they are doing, here I have so much food here. Out of that food, I am taking only the food that I wanted to eat. That means out of 10,000 records, I have taken only 5,000 records here. Right? I have taken 5,000 records, or I have taken some count of records I have taken. That means I am placing into some plate here. Those records are basically, this is kind of a table. I'm taking few tables here. I'm taking few tables. That nothing but this is basically this plate is or not, or this whatever the food that I have taken in the plate is nothing but that is a batch. That is a batch which has a collection of records, which has a collection of records, or which has a collection of food items are there in that. So whatever the food items are there, so which is having a divided like a rice or whatever the food items are there, everything is a kind of a table. It's a table. The table is whatever I have taken from the object and I have placed into my temporary memory and created a one table there. That means I have placed into a batch. Now I have placed into a batch. Now this batch is sitting into the temporary memory. Now out of this batch, assume that this batch has a maybe some 1,000 records or a 2,000 records or lot of records are there. Right? Lot of records are there here. That means lot of food is there here. Now this food, will the person will eat all together at one shot, or the person will take bite by bite?
Bite by bite.
He will take a bite by bite. He will not take entire food at a time into the mouth. Right? So that means this person, as this person is taking bite by bite, that means piece by piece he is taking. Similarly, batch also will process the data piece by piece. At a time cannot process. At a time cannot process all the data together. So that's the reason we have a batch size limit. There is a batch size limit. That means you can take a batch size, minimum size is a 1. That means 1 you can take it, or maximum size is, you can place it as a 2,000 record. Maximum size by default 2,000 records, and the default is 200. Default is 200. Like this person is taking a bite of a kind of a chip, one chip or one papad, whatever it is taking, one bite it is taking, very less amount of food, right? Or the person is taking big food amount of food he is taking at a time. So it is based on the how much bite you are taking. Similarly, batch also, we have to give a limit or the size thing. Each batches, how many records can be processed. That means each transaction minimum I'm giving it as a 1. That means whenever each transaction of the batch is processed, just process the one record. That means take one byte at a time. The small byte, whatever is there, take during this transaction. If I'm giving a default as a 200, that means take it as a little bit bigger byte and process it. And maximum size is 2000 records. Maximum size is 2000 records. Now, whenever this person is taking the byte, okay, there are three things are working in the human body. There are three things are working in the human body. So whenever you are eating, your brain has to work. That means your mind has to tell that you are feeling hungry or take a bite there. Okay, your brain has to work and your hand has to work. Your hand has to work and your mouth has to work. These three mechanics should work in your human body. If these three works, then only you can process taking the food and you can process the food properly. If one of them is not working, it is very difficult to maintain it, right? So these three things has to be executed in the human body so that you can take a food bite by bite. So your brain has to tell your hand, go ahead and pick up the bite from the plate and put it into the mouth. So hand will take that bite, the hand will go ahead and put the, take the, whatever the food is there, they will take it and put it into the mouth. And mouth has to process whatever the next process has to be done. Now, similarly, batch class is also has a three mechanism. Batch class is also has a three mechanism, which is in the batch class, we have a start mechanism, which is a start method. Second one, which is has a execute mechanism, which is a execute method. And the third one is a finish method. Third one is a finish method. Finish method is nothing but done. So once you are processed in the mouth, that means done. Your process is completed from the starting. Next, you have to take another bite. Now, which bite you have to take, your brain has to tell. Whether you want a papad or you want a different, that everything, the brain has to tell the hand, take this particular bite. Similarly, in the batch class also, we have a start method, execute method, finish method. These all tied together. These all tied together. That means these three are working together. What is execute is happening told by the start method. Start method will tell to the execute method, execute will perform it, and then again it will go back to the start method. It will give you some information. Again, it will perform the execute method. Now, in order to this, make them to combine it, like in the brain, hand, mouth. If these three are separate pieces, the human, it does not work. So these all are combined into the human body. So that's the reason these three are combined together and performing. So similarly, we have to combine this together. And in order to combine this, in order to make a communication between these three methods, we have to use an interface. So that interface is Database.Batchable. That interface is Database.Batchable. So this interface will enable the communication between the start, execute, finish. Database.Batchable interface enable the communication between the start method, execute method, finish method. Now let's go back to here, batch apex. So the limit is for the batch apex is 50 million records. 50 million records maximum. So by dividing these records into the various batches, batch can perform. So at a time, 50 million records, we should not be processing. Like at a time, eating a food altogether is not good for health. So similarly, batch also should not process at a time 50 million records. You have to divide those records piece by piece and tell the system tell the system or tell the interface to process step by step. So why we use the batch apex? In order to perform a long running operation. In order to perform a long running operation. For example, there is a process that needs to be executed and it is going to take a lot of time, and we do not want any clients to be sitting there, or we do not want anybody to be waiting for this because of this, right? So those kind of a scenarios, whenever I feel that there is a long time process which needs to be happen, like during night time, like today, whatever the records came from the third party system, all the records should be updated opportunity stage equal to in progress. So in a day, I'll be receiving 10,000 records, 50,000 records, or more than 50,000 records. Everything I need to process it in the midnight, so that next day, whoever comes in the online client, they can see that yesterday's records are changed into the in progress. So batch apex is usually used for the long running operation. And then batch class always runs inside the apex queue. We have a apex queue where the data, where the records or the requests are stored there. So our batch class at the back end, this is a back end, batch class at the back end, it always execute inside the apex queue. It will not execute inside our organization. It will always execute inside the apex queue. So inside the apex queue means whatever the requests that are coming to the server system, everything sits into the apex queue. From there, it is going to pick up everything. From there, it is going to pick up everything. Now, so for batch class also, let's assume that I have a database.com. We all know that Salesforce has a database.com where we are storing all our data inside the database.com. Assume that inside this database.com, right now we have an account of table. We have an account table, and inside the account table, I have a 20 million records. I have a 20 million records. Now, I wanted to update these 20 million records, contact ID or a rating or an industry, some data I wanted to update for these 20 million records inside this account table, inside this account table. Now, that means right now, where is my table? My table is in the database.com. My table is in the database.com. Now, I need somebody to retrieve that these 20 million records from the database to the business logic side. I need somebody to perform it. Okay. In order to batch class, for doing the batch class, for implementing the batch class, we have a method called start method. So basically, there is an outer side here. We have a database.batchable interface. Outer side, I need to build a interface. That means a thin line of the batch class. So whenever we are implementing a batch class, we have to give a interface here. We need to give a interface database.batchable. What will happen? Whatever the execution is happening within the batch class, your interface is surrounded by it. Your interface is surrounded by it. That means whatever the executions are happening within the batch class, everything is controlled by the interface, which is called as a database batchable. Now, inside the database batchable, I have a start method, as I have mentioned, and then I have an execute method, and then I have a finish method. In the database.batchable, I have a start method, execute method, finish method. These three methods are available. Now, in the start method, I need to query the data from the account table because I need to process a 20 million records piece by piece, and I need to give it to the execute method. Execute method will execute the piece by piece, and then finally it will finish it. Now, in order to get this record, in order to get the records from the database.com, usually what we do, we write a SOQL query, select or ID, or you can take any field here from from account. Like this, you will write it. This is the normal SOQL query, you will write it, right? But this SOQL query cannot be handled more records. Basically, every time I cannot query the records. Every time I cannot query the records because let's assume that in the start method, we have to write a SOQL query. We have to write a SOQL query. So how many records can be queried using the normal SOQL query? 50,000 records we can, 100 queries can be possible, but the number of records will be retrieved 50,000. Records will be retrieved 50,000 and the query executed 100 times. Now, if I have to get this 20 million records, 100 queries is not enough. 100 queries is not enough because the SOQL query, the number of queries that I can write is 100. Now, 100 queries is not enough for me to bring the 20 million record, right? So here in the start method, whenever we are writing the SOQL query, what is happening here is it will bring the data from account table and then it will give it to a temporary buffer memory here, temporary buffer memory. So it will pass it to the temporary buffer memory. Now, what is the query that we need to write it? What is the query that we need to write it in order to get the 20 million record? The limit for the batch class inside the batch class is 50 million records it can process. 50 million records can be processed by the batch class. Now, how can I retrieve the 20 million records? In order to retrieve the 20 million records, what you need to do is you need to use a database method, which is database class, which is called as a database.getQuery. You need to use database.getQuery. Inside the get query, you need to process, you need to pass this query. So database.query, get query locator. So inside this get query locator, and you need to pass the query inside it. You need to pass the query inside it. So you are passing here database query get query locator. Database.get query locator. Inside this database.get query locator, you need to pass your query in the string format. In the string format, you need to pass it. Now, by using this query, what it does is it will get the information from the table and it will store it into a temporary memory. There is a called as temporary buffer memory. So this will store it into the temporary buffer memory. Now, at a time, it can retrieve the 20 million records. At a time, it can retrieve whatever the records are there, it can retrieve it. Okay, assume that 450,000 records it is retrieving at a time. Well, it is retrieving some records here, more records it is retrieving. Now, when it is retrieving it, right now, somebody has to divide that long data into the piece by piece. Long into the piece by piece. Now this person has taken a food into this. Now somebody has to divide that food into small piece by piece. Similarly, right now this SOQL query is bringing the lot of data from account table because inside the start method, the start method only one time it will hit the account table. Only one time it will hit the account table and it will bring 20 million records. It will not go back to the account table. Right now I have completed 10 records and again give me that another 10 records. No, it will not do. In the start method, in interface, what it does is everything, whatever we need to perform it, everything will bring into the start method and it will store it into the temporary buffer memory. But in the temporary buffer memory, somebody has to divide that long batch into the piece by piece. That is done by the database.query locator. That means here the SOQL query is getting the record using the database.getQueryLocator, and it is storing into the temporary buffer memory, and this temporary buffer memory is passing the data to the database.queryLocator class. Database.queryLocator class. Now inside this database query locator class, what it does is it will perform some business logic, and then it will divide into the piece by piece batches. So whatever the total records are there, total records, it will divide into the each one of them here. Batch 1, batch 2, batch 3, batch 4. Like this, it will be divided in the temporary memory. Now, once it is divided, so now the start method is completed. Start method work is get the data from database.com and pass it to the temporary memory, so that my database.queryLocator will divide that long batch into the small batches. Now, once it is done with the dividing the small batches, now the start batch will request a batch here. Will send a request to the batch. That means here there is a involved in the database.batchable interface. The start method will inform the database.batchable interface saying that I am done with dividing the long records into the small pieces. I'm done with the dividing into the small pieces. Now send these small pieces into the next method. The next method is execute method. So what it does is it will take the batch one. And this database.queryLocator send that batch one to the here. So that means here I'll not have a complete records. I'll have only batch one, and whatever the limit I have given here, based on the limit, it will pass that batch one. So if I give a 200, 200. So if I give a 1, it will pass the only one record. Assume that in this case, one record. So it will pass the batch 1. Now this batch is going to send that batch 1 to the execute batch. Now execute batch will perform a business logic, and what it does, it will again come back to the start method. It will come back to the start method saying that I'm done with the batch 1. Now do I have anything to process? So database.queryLocator check this temporary buffer, and yes, there is a batch 2 is there. Now it will send the batch 2 saying that execute method is completed. Now send the batch 2. Now this batch, what it does, it will send the batch 2. Now once this is done, it will again call back to the, it will go back to the start method. In the start method, again, it will hit the query locator till the B6, the batch 6 is completed. It will go on into the loop. This gets executed, keep on executing. As soon as the database.queryLocator says that there is no more batches to execute it, then the execute method will send the will inform the finish method saying that execution is completed on all the records, all the batches. Execution is completed on all the batches. Now you perform whatever the finish execute method is there. Finish method is there. That means final. So final methods are basically sending the email, which is not related to this data, like sending a final email to the client, like batch is completed. All the batches are completed. The final method email I wanted to send. Right, so what are the finish method is there that will perform the finish method. Now, so this is all the execution that happens in the batch class. This all execution happens in the batch class. So start method and execute method, and again the start method, this will go on loop till the batches are completed in the temporary buffer. Once it is done, then it goes to the finish method. Any question on the batch class?
Swapna, You said we can retrieve any number of records, right? Suppose now there are 20 million records. In the start method, we retrieve all the records, correct? So, so there is no governor limit on how many records we can retrieve here. Because usually we can.
Batch class has a 50 million records. When we are writing start method in the interface called database.batchable, definitely the database.batchable, the batch class governor limits will be applied here.
Okay.
Ma'am, like here we have using like a database.get query locator, right? So with that, we are fetching all the records from database to this database.batchable interface. Is that?
Yes.
Okay, just like a query.
Yeah, it's like a query, just like I'm retrieving the data from the database.com to start method.
Okay, this database.query locator class. This will make like these. Like what exactly?
Database.query locator is whatever this big chunk of records are there, it will divide that chunk of records into the multiple pieces.
Okay.
Okay, so let's move on. Now let's see the step 1. Create a batch class with the global access specified. So few developers write the batch class with the public, but I would suggest to not write, do not use the access modifier public, use the global for the batch classes. And implement the class with interface database.batchable. That is the first step. Syntax is global class name. As we are including here the interface database.batchable, we are using here implements. We are using the implements. That means we are telling the normal Apex class that you are going to use the interface here. We are implementing this class with the use of interface. Now we will write a logic inside this. This is the step 1. Step 1 is access modifier global, and you need to use the implements and specify your interface database.batchable S object. You need to specify S object only, nothing else here. Don't give account opportunity, don't give anything here. You need to specify database.batchable less than S object greater than. Same command we have to use it. Now step 2. Write the interface method inside the class. Inside the class, you need to write a interface method. What are the interface method right now? We have start method, execute method, finish method. So we need to write start method, execute method, finish method inside the class. So syntax class, global class name, implements database.batchable S object, and inside this we are writing the interface method, which is a first one is a start method. So for the start method, what I'm using here, database.query locator. I'm using a database.query locator. Because inside this start method, whatever we are running the query, that query gives the long records. The more records it will give, right? So this database.query locator, what it does, it will divide into the smaller pieces. Now global, the here return type is database.query locator. Return type for the start method is database.query locator. And next method is execute method. Execute method does not have any return type. It does not return anything. It's a void. Execute method does not have any return type. It's a void. And we will write some logic inside it. Similarly, finish method also does not have any return type. So it is a void. Only return type is available for the start method, which is a database.query locator, Inside this start method, we will write some logic to retrieve the data from database.com. Now here execute method where we will write a logic to perform a business logic, calculation, updating, insert, delete, some DML operation. In case if I wanted to perform anything business logic, I'll write it into the execute method. And the finish method is post execution, like whatever is happened so far. After that, if I wanted to perform any other things, right, which is not related to the updating the record or anything like sending an emails. Usually we do it for the sending an emails. So finish method. Now these are the three methods. Database.query locator is the return type for the start method. For other two, there is no return type. Now we have a individual, right now we have a individual start method, execute method, finish method. They are not connected right now. These are individual. In order to connect them, this interface, whatever the interface we have, database.batchable interface, we need to specify inside the every method parameter. That means database.batchable context is the parameter for the start method. Database.batchable context is the another parameter for the execute method. Similarly, finish method also should have a database.batchable context, and you can give any name here. If you do not have this database.batchable context parameter in every method, then they are not linked to each other. They cannot communicate to each other. If you have this interface is mentioned in the parameter, then only start method can communicate to execute method. Once the execute is done, it can communicate to the start method. And once this process is done, execute can communicate to the finish method. So database.batchable context. You have to mention database.batchable context. You can give any name here, reference name. And similarly, you need to mention the execute level database.batchable context refer name. In the finish method, database.batchable context refer name. Now, so that all three are connected right now. Now, when the all three are connected, now the start method is querying the data. Now, the database.query locator is dividing the data into small pieces. The data has to be passed to the execute method. It might be querying the account record, it might be querying the custom object, it might be querying the different object, right? How will execute method know that which object is it querying it? Because inside this, I have a business logic in order to perform it. So that's the reason we have a second parameter here. In the execute method, we have a second parameter where you can pass the list of S object and what are the parameter name is there. So output of the database.query locator is list. Output of the database.query locator is a list. And this list, you need to pass it. You need not to specify anywhere. You just need to specify what is the object that you are passing here. So you can give any name. Now internally start method will give that records to the execute method. Now ideally in the Apex class, what we used to do is, in case if I have two methods. So method 1 is here and method 2 is here. So let's assume that method 2 is expecting a string. String ID is expecting. So what I'll do is inside this method 2, whenever I'm calling the method 2 inside the method 1, I'll pass the ID to it, right? ID to it. Like this, we will pass it. Now, in this case, in the batch class, you do not need to pass anything. You do not need to pass anything from the start method. Why? You just need to specify here what is the parameter that is expected. That's it. Because internally at the back end, this M1, the start method, is already connected with the execute method with the help of database.batchable context. And when it is connected, internally it will say that, okay, these are the records, list of the records that you need to perform the business logic. which can give into the execute method automatically internal. So you need not to specify that calling the execute method here and passing the parameter, you need not to specify anything. Clear? Any questions?
So now
Yeah.
consider, okay, now suppose there is a requirement that we have to send email to all the contacts, suppose whatever. So suppose there are 50 million contacts. At night, we want to send the email to all those 50 million contacts.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. So so the business logic of sending the email will come in the execute method, right?
You are not performing anything. You are not performing anything. Just you are sending an email.
Yes, yes. I'm not doing any DML. DML is just fetching the context. Okay. And to each contact, I'm getting the email ID and I'm sending the email to that email ID, to that contact.
Yeah, in that case, if you are doing only the email, then execute method. So any
Execute
business logic, like finish method is like once it is saved the record. Okay. For example, if you are not doing any logic, there is no point of having the batch class here. Okay, so that can be executed through the lightning flows and the different ways which we can execute it. Only if you are sending an email, batch class is a not right way to implement it. So here what we are doing is, in case if we are performing any batch class in the save result, in the finish method, what you can do is you can pass your list here also. So in the finish method, you can see what are the save results are there. Once a record is saved, and those save records only I wanted to send an email, that can be performed in the finish method. But if your requirement is only to send an email without any business logic, I won't suggest that going with a batch class.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Ma'am, I have one question.
Yeah.
Regarding this email.
Mhm.
I have learned that in 24 hours we can send maximum up to 5,000 email only.
Right.
Is this correct?
Yes.
So if there is more than 5,000 records, it's possible to send email.
You can send it. There is a possible.
Okay.
Yeah. We will see that whenever we are sending an email template. So basically we have a 5,000. So there is a differentiation here. We have a internal users and external users. Okay, I'm diverting here. Just excuse me for here. So we have a internal users for external users. Okay. The governor limits are only for the external users, not for the internal users. Not for the internal users. You can send maximum of 5,000 emails for the external users. Internal, you can send n number of it. External means who does not have a, like they just have a one license, like a community license, that they have a per license is available for them. Community license. Right, so for them it is in 5,000. Anyway, we will discuss this whenever we are doing the email part of it.
Okay.
But this is definitely external members, not for the internal members. There is no limit for the internal. Right, this is within the 24 hours.
And in 24 hours, how much batch class we can run?
You can run it in 24 hours, not in the 24 hours. Usually batch classes are usually scheduled. So whenever it is scheduled, it can process during that time. It might go for 1 hour, it might go for 2 hours. So usually we schedule a batch classes whenever the resources are not available in the system, so that my process will be easier to go.
Swapna, when you say
Very rare scenarios that go like a longer, like a 1 day, 2 days continuously. If your batch class is running for the continuously 2 days, ultimately on the 3rd day your system will be performing very slow. You need to contact the Salesforce support.
Swapna,
Yeah.
when you say schedule, so it means we have to do it in another way, right?
Yes,
The
yes.
batchable
We'll
class
discuss that
itself
later.
is not schedulable.
No.
Okay.
We will discuss that later. Is that clear? The another question? Like it doesn't depend on the hours wise, the batch class. It's just depending on the how many records you are performing it. If you are performing continuously a day, continuously 2 days, definitely you need to reach out to Salesforce support. Because there is something which is taking a longer time, making your system going into the slow. And this has happened in one of my project. Right? So that those are the very rare scenarios. That's a very rare scenario. So the third step is invoke the batch class, create the batch class object. So basically, once we are done with implementing this class, now we need to invoke the batch class. That means I need to create a object for batch class. Like in order to create an object for batch class, so what I need to use is database.execute batch. So what I'm doing here, I'm executing the batch. I'm executing the batch. So that means on the spot, I'm running my batch. I'm not scheduling it, but I'm running my batch on the spot in order to test it possible, or in order to test my logic, or in order to check what is happening in my batch class. For that, I'm using the database.execute batch, and batchable, whatever the object is there, I'm giving that object here. And then what is the size? Could be a 1, could be a 200, could be the maximum is 2000. If you do not give anything, the default is 200. And we can track the status of the batch class. How can we track the batch class? So basically we can track it, setup, monitor, job, Apex job. So we have a user interface where I can monitor my batch class, what is happening. If there is any error happen on the batch class, I can go to this Apex batch and I can see the details. So if you go to the here home, so directly you can search here Apex job. Directly search Apex job. So when you search here Apex job, you can see all your batch jobs, whatever the process failure submitted by which Apex class, which method, what is the Apex job ID, and who has submitted, what is the completion date, what is the status, whether it is successful or not, what is the job type, everything you can monitor in the Apex jobs. In case if you wanted to monitor through the programming, then you have to execute the query. The query you need to execute it on the object called async Apex job. All the jobs will be stored into the async Apex job. So select ID status, total job items, job item process, number of errors. If there are any errors created by email from async Apex job, where the ID is, there will be ID batch job ID will be there. So you can give the batch job ID. In case if you do not know the batch job ID, that's all totally fine. You can simply run this till here, async Apex job. That's all. Any questions on this? Invoke batch class, track the status of the batch class. Okay, so what did we learn so far?
About database class, insert method,
DML drawbacks, database class.
database class methods like insert, update, delete, upset,
Yeah.
insert database methods, batch processing.
Empty recycle bin, and then synchronous process, asynchronous process. Then we have seen the batch apex. And how to, what all things needs to be done whenever we write a batch class. The steps for the batch class. Tomorrow we will see the how to write a program for the batch class.
Swapna?
Yeah, just a
Yeah,
second.
I have
So
yeah, okay.
for today, and there is a trial head batch. I'm giving the trial head batch these batches. So this has a batch class, asynchronous apex, and database. So go through these trial heads. Fine. So that's all for today.